When we compress the terrain of grief, we also compress the territory of joy. And we end up living in a flatline culture, which is where we are right now in society. This is a quote from Francis Weller, who studies grief in depth, and I've been researching for a while now, and has been a big inspiration to have this conversation on grief. And to me, highlights a lot of what we want to go into and why we should be giving more space to grief, because it allows the full spectrum human experience to come through.
I love that quote, and thank you for sharing it and bringing it up and bringing his work. It's the cliche, like you can't appreciate the sunshine without the rain, but that's the polarities of life, right? And that flatlining of a lot of emotions, and grief being, we've talked about something that's universal, so it connects all of us. And I find the most powerful emotion to transmute change, to feel, really. And we're going to talk about our personal experiences and being in it, but we're excited to have a discussion around it and share like some tools to navigate it so that we can have a more full spectrum experience of life, even though the natural tendency, and I think what we're taught, is bad, you know.
Not that one. Other emotions, not that one.
Yeah.
Don't get lost in grief. That's something Francis Weller talks about too, is people think if I go into it, I'm going to get lost in it. But he reframes it. He's like, if you don't go into it, you'll be lost, because you're not going to actually feel the fullness of what's possible. So you won't be in reality, you won't be in truth. You'll be lost without going deep into the grief, without allowing yourself to go there. And nothing lasts forever. But grief does feel like one of those things. I know personally, out of some things that have come up in the past couple months, couple years, you go in and it's all engulfing. And you're like, oh, damn, okay, there's a lot here to feel. But when you go into it fully, this quote we talk about often is, any feeling fully felt is bliss, is very true in the sense of grief. You go into it and it's like, there's an arrival, there's a bliss when you fully go in. You don't suppress it, because when you suppress it, obviously, it trickles in other areas of life. Mm-hmm. But we don't get lost in it, we get lost without it.
Yeah, some of the most beautiful moments of my life when I was thinking about this conversation have been in deep grief. And it feels contradictory, but when we fully feel these things and we think about the positive emotions, or even me saying grief is not positive is kind of putting it in a box. Obviously, it doesn't usually feel positive in the moment, and it can be such a positive catalyst for the human experience. So in a sense, it can be positive.
Yeah, and it could be really deeply connecting, like you're saying. I think it's one of the most connecting emotional experiences, like ecstasy and joy, right? These like higher things where like, yeah, they're so fun. But then when you go into grief, you see like the vulnerability of the person. Like you've held me in grief, and I was just a puddle of the mess, just collapsing into you and being held, like completely just held. And that, I think, brought us closer than any ecstatic dance we went to, any, surf, even though pretty sweet to catch waves together. But the grief brought us deeper, I feel, and maybe your perspective holding me in grief, but I was grieving and being with you. I'm like, oh my God, dude, I love you, man. Like you're holding me in this. I see you and I appreciate you. Just brought us so much deeper.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm getting emotional thinking about it because, and we haven't really talked about this, but it was definitely connecting. And for me, it was to be able to hold you in that space, literally and figuratively, because I feel that you hold so many other people. And with this situation, you were holding another person and feeling that grief. And it was, I think, one of the first times in our friendship that I felt you, not just around grief, but you being like, dude, hold me, take care of me, or like, I need you, and asking for that. And so it was super sweet and beautiful and connecting because I related to the place you were in, right? Like this experience of grief, right? And that's so connecting, and that we could share it, and that you felt the trust in our friendship and in me to open up and to allow yourself that. So it's like from a friendship perspective and for yourself to allow yourself to feel that. Cause I had sensed that, like it was just around different things, and you carry a lot. I think as men in general, especially like bigger, literally physically bigger men tend to carry more. So yeah, it was beautiful and hard, obviously, for you, and super connecting.
Yeah. Maybe we should start there then with breakups, because that was the situation.
Yeah.
And I think many people, probably people listening to this as we framed before this episode, is probably a lot of people are coming here because they're navigating a grief. A breakup is a very common one. And it also can feel like a death, which we'll get into separately. But for me, it definitely felt like that. And it makes sense to share this one because it was only a couple months ago that I broke up with a partner that I was with for years, 3.5 years. And it was my decision. And yet it doesn't mean I'm not going to feel grief just because I chose it, because the death of who we were, past tense, the death of what we have right now, what's present, and the death of what we were going to be and who I was going to be and the agreements we made and the vision and stories we had of what was going to unfold. All of that was dying and decaying. But in past relationships, when I've ended them, I'm like, oh, it's my choice. I'm doing it. Blah, blah, blah. I can bypass. This time I was like, no, I need to give space to the grief. So much so that actually 5 days after, I moved everything in my calendar. It was on a Monday, and I didn't do anything until that Saturday. I moved everything. From that first day, I was like, I got to move my whole week. I just want to give space for grieving. I just want to give permission to myself to grieve. Because I've read about this, I've studied this, I've talked about it, but I didn't actually put it into practice in a real way. And in that breakup, I was like, I really want to do this. I really want to go into it. Not as if there's a right or wrong way to navigate this, but just space for it. And one of the biggest moments was leaning on you. I think it was the day after that it happened, as I was with the partner I was with at the time, and we were breaking up. So we're grieving together. That's a whole thing around, we created a space for us to grieve, for an uncoupling ceremony and all of that, which we can get into. But that is important with the person. But then it felt even more important to do it with you, somebody who is my friend and somebody who I don't often say, dude, hold me, I need to be held right now, because I can navigate a lot on my own. And then to just be like, man, I can't do this alone. Mm-hmm. Hold me. And you did so beautifully. Just went over to your house, literally we laid on a couch. I think I had my head in your lap, and I was just allowing myself to be fully in grief and in the moment of I'm suffering, and just let it be suffering. And what I loved about what you did, which maybe we can talk about the perspective of the person who's holding the grief, is you didn't try to solve it. I think it's really important to anchor in and to bring forward to people that are holding grief, but then also with yourself. Because what you showed me there was, there's nothing to solve here. So don't try to be like, why am I feeling it was this and it should be different. No, just feel it. Like, I'm with you. And I think you said not many words, but the words you said were really potent and important. You're like, I'm here. I'm with you. I see you. And so it was a big moment for me to lean on you like that and to ask that of you. And I felt so met in my grief. And you actually appreciated that it was happening. And I came to you and didn't want to change it. It was like, let's be in it. Mm-hmm. And yeah, man, I appreciate you so much for that moment. And it brings our trust so much deeper. I can trust you so much more now, and myself to ask of you, and I hope vice versa, because we're able to go to that vulnerable place. Yeah, I feel very grateful for you And yeah, wonder from your perspective as somebody who's the space holder of grief, how that is.
Yeah, thank you for all your words. And yeah, I think you touched on a few important things as it relates to both sides of it, right? It's like not being afraid to ask for support is a huge thing. We talked about in preparation for this conversation, but just the bypassing and how that's such a big part of feeling grief is just allowing the space. I think it's also okay to distract yourself in the sense of like, do the things you love, get outside, take a walk, and feel what you need to feel. And there's like an equilibrium between those two, and to ask for help. And then as someone supporting, you know, if you're supporting someone, and is just to be there. You don't need to fix anything, right? Because there is no like right or wrong in that moment. You just need to hold the space, and you can say, you know, I'm here. And when you really tune into that for yourself as supporting someone, you feel more connected, and you understand that they are you, and you know, it's like that we are all one. But that's where grief, I feel like, more than most other emotions, because it can be felt so deeply and we all experience it, that we can meet that person there. And even if we're not experiencing the same loss, just be like, I know, you know, I know. Yeah. I feel you. I've been there. And if you haven't been there, that's also okay. But most of us have gone through a breakup, you know, and yeah, and just not trying to fix.
Yeah. And like listening is enough. Just your presence alone was enough. If there was nothing you had to say, you could have said zero things, and just being there with me in space would have been enough. I think it's often when we're holding people in sadness or uncomfortable emotions, we're like, but think about the bright side, and come on. It's like, no.
Yeah.
No. And then we're probably doing that with ourselves if we're doing that with other people in small ways, in the micro grief, which we'll get into. These little moments where we could feel a little bit of grief and tenderness, where we're like, oh, no, like my life's great. Oh, no, but no. And you just bypass. Instead, come into it, sink into it. Because on the other side, for instance, after those 5 days of just giving so much space, I have so intentional, like these 5 days are for my grief. Nothing has priority over it. I've never done that before. I've never given that much space. And then the way that I could appreciate the sun, the way that I could appreciate the ocean, the levity we could have together after, because we went to the depths together. Mm-hmm. It felt like there was this other experience. I'm like, oh, I didn't notice the flat line that I was living in. And, you know, moving, but then I went deep, so then I could rise higher. And then now there's more space to feel. There's more of a spectrum of awareness when I go deep into that. And yeah, I think it shifted what's possible in our friendship. It's shifted what's possible in my experience to be held and to ask for support. Like you said, men, big men in particular, but men in general, it's not often that we will lead into that, to asking for help. And it's kind of given that permission to me. But you brought up a really good point, which is something Francis Weller also talks about, which is the primary versus secondary satisfactions, and how even in that moment, I realized I had stuff on my calendar, I had clients to show up for, I had stuff to do. And a piece of me was like, I can just do those things. I'm good at those things, like for sure. But another piece of me was a deeper knowing of there's something to feel here. There's more to sink into. And when he talks about primary versus secondary, the secondary satisfactions are the quick fixes. I'm going to scroll on my phone. I'm going to stay busy. I'm going to do the thing. Like, I got stuff to do, so I have to do the stuff. So then I'm up here. I don't need to feel right now. I'll feel when it's convenient. Just distracting, false connection, false expression, not in truth. Then the primary is asking for help. It's pausing, doing nothing, which is very hard for many people, myself included. The art of doing nothing. And what arises in that place when I gave myself space to do nothing, if I want to grieve, I'll grieve. I have these days, nothing's on the agenda. How many tears, how much emotion came through was incredible. I was surprised. Like, I've never cried this much in my life. I've never given myself this much space in my life. So I didn't allow space for the primary satisfactions, for the real ones, instead of just going and bypassing. And I didn't surf at all. I didn't do these things. I went on walks, but I was intentional about slowing. Don't do the things that I know feel really good, that are the secondary hits that I get validated in and I can bypass, but the primary satisfactions. And I think if we could do that more in general, not just when we're grieving, but in general, if we can do that more, lean into the primary satisfactions, we're going to feel more connected, more content, and more permission to have emotional experiences. Yeah.
Yeah. And one of the things that I think about to what you're saying is feeling the things that, like, our busyness is to distract ourselves from our imminent death. And yeah, I mean, this is more macro, but it's directly related, that especially now more than ever, that we make ourselves busy to distract ourselves from the things that are painful, a loss, a breakup. And I think that the ultimate pain that we come to realize maybe when we're like 7 or 8 is that we're mortal, and that's scary. And we'd rather not think about it. And my daughter Stella is 10, and she's definitely in the last year become a bit existential, and because her little brain is starting to think about these things. And it reminds me of when I was her age. And and I try to teach her at that age what will be hopefully valuable to her as she grows up. In relating to her first breakup is that feel that. She's 8, it's just coming online, now she's 10, but to talk about it. And I think it starts with death when we're young kids. Our family pet dies. And often in the West, it's like, no, it's okay. And we have stories. And if you're religious, that's okay. And I feel like it's like, oh, well, they're in a better place. And let's not, it's kind of just not, they're no longer with us. That feels sad. How does that feel? And so I'm trying to instill that in her now for our family. But the point is to not push that away. And I think that will set herself up, later in life. And so related to this whole discussion of us not really having these tools from a young age, it's often bad or pushed away.
It's a good transition to grieving death. It's the start of that concept, because it could be our own death. It could be somebody that has died or somebody that is dying, which we've had experiences with. But the idea of death being bad and wrong, and it in the West, it's often not talked about. It's taboo to even speak about. But if you go to places like Bhutan, where they meditate on death up to 8 times a day, in Bhutan, they meditate on death. And that was so inspiring to me when I found that out, because those are the most content and happy people I know, and they spend the most time focusing on death. Seems contradictory. You're like, oh, that's morbid. No, that can't be good. Oh, they're very content. They are. The happiest country in the world. They're well known to be that. Their GDP is based on happiness in their country, because they don't avoid the unknown. They lean into it. So even if you don't know what's going to happen after death, how could anyone actually know unless you had a near-death experience and you connect to that? But being okay in the unknown, allowing yourself to grieve the unknown, allowing it to be a hard experience. But the more you dance with grief, the more you can accept uncertainty. And I think they do that so well in Bhutan and many places. I just personally know Bhutanese people, and I love how they move in that culture, because they go to their deathbed often. They do a deathbed meditation where they go to the end of their life, they think back, they connect to what matters, what were they most afraid of, the hardest things, their regrets, yada, yada, on their deathbed. And then now they've just trained the connection to death so many times, put the repetition in, and when they are close to it or a loved one is in it, in the experience of dying, it's beautiful. It's like, oh yeah, we've been here. We know this. We don't just avoid the thing that is most certain in life, which is death. We connect to it and we allow the grieving of it and see that we can create peace around it. And I think in that sense, a lot of Bhutanese people are very good with uncertainty, very good with unknown, very good with grief, because they allow it in their regular life and their day-to-day experience. In the West, not so much. Growing up, funeral is a bad thing, is a sad thing. Talking about death, you don't do it. Even having an experience recently where my father is navigating mortality through cancer, people don't want to talk about it, my father included, and I want to talk about it. I want to explore it, I want to feel it, I want to navigate, I want to grieve it. And yet it's just not embedded in the system of the West. Francis Weller talks about it as heroic culture versus village culture. Like the heroic meaning, I've got this, I'm going to do it alone, which is, for instance, what my father's navigating right now. He's sick, he's not well, and he could die soon. And he is saying, I'm going to be heroic. I'm going to do it by myself. We could go based on village culture and ask for the support, like when I leaned into you, and then really be shown up for and with and in love around the grief versus bypassing it. So I think shifting from that heroic mentality to I need to do it, which I need to constantly remind myself to not be the hero and try to do it all myself, but to actually let myself be in discomfort and grief and unknown, ask for help from you, be in that village mentality. Yeah, I think it's a good framing for a lot of these conversations, especially around death. Do you have any experiences with death and with grief?
Yeah, nothing super close to home, parent or sibling. And as I thought about it, having Stella bring this up reminded me of when I was 8, 9 years old. And it's my most vivid memory of those first realizations of like, mom and dad are gonna die and I'm gonna die. And it was scary. It was so scary. And, my mom, I wouldn't say pushed it away. She would say, we don't know what happens. And as you get older, you'll start to feel more comfortable with this idea. And that was somehow comforting. It's what I've told Stella. And, and then we're just dealing with the broader culture of funerals and it just wasn't talked about, as opposed to if we grew up in Bhutan where it's just meditated on, and it creates, like you said, that depth of experience where we can go there and acknowledge, yeah, it sucks, like that we're mortal and we don't know. And it's part of the beauty of life that we don't have forever, and to make the most of our days. So, yeah. And then I was thinking back to when Stella was in the hospital. She was very sick with pneumonia, and it was super scary. Any parent that has a sick kid, and it brings you into reality like nothing else will, and the things that we thought that matter don't. And I think part of this conversation is feeling the things that you need to feel when they come up, or in the past that you haven't grieved, and going back to them, and the tools to do that, creating the space, and just allowing the normal human experience of like we've talked about prior to the show, of like these tiny grief moments, of one being like when a kid gets older, as a kid gets older, grieving the loss of their innocence, the loss of their being a little toddler.
Maybe you could go into that specifically with you, because to start this episode, we always do a practice, and we did a practice on grief and the somatic practice of grief, giving it a sound and we just went into it a little bit together for like 3 minutes, maybe 3 to 5 minutes. But maybe you could share with Stella, like how it's feeling to be a father and have a kid that's growing up, because parents can probably relate to this. There's grief around that with you. So I'd love this specific story that you have with her and how that's feeling. Because in a way it is like a death of what she was at a younger age. And the uncertainty, the death, the unknown. And yeah, I can imagine the bypassing can happen of just being grateful. Oh, it's just a part of life that she'll grow up. And so you just accept, which can be beautiful. But then you're kind of bypassing the presence that grief brings, which you just talked about, which is the presence that you had when she was in the hospital. It's like nothing else matters but this moment. It's rare that we get that in life. And grief is an opportunity to bring us to the present moment and how important it is now. But it's also a death of what was. So maybe you could share more on that. I'd love to know.
Yeah. It's very tender and different grief of different relationships will feel different. Grieving your child is going to feel different. I think the main theme here is just allowing the space, but like taking the time to think about it or look at a picture when they were young, be like, oh, and appreciating it. You know, like we're saying that the grieving the child growing up is the same as grieving a death. No, it's grief, sure, but it's different kind, right? Pausing to appreciate and grieve your child growing up, you know, and appreciating that. And another thing that I grieved was my life prior to being a dad and the freedom that I had. And I almost felt guilty early on when I would feel that, because I didn't really feel it, because you kind of turn a switch and you're a parent and that's what you do. And I think as she's gotten older and she's more independent, and I'm like starting to experience the freedom I had maybe before she was born. I wouldn't change a thing. I'm so happy she's here. But like, yeah, that version of myself. And it's more of like an appreciation too.
But to let it be grief, that's the thing. Like even the justification that we feel like we have to make of like, but I am proud, I am happy, I'm so grateful. But to just be like, yeah, and I can just grieve in that. But you did something yesterday, right? You did some sort of practice to drop into this. Maybe you could go into what that was specifically with her, and because it might be insightful for somebody to be like, okay, I hear all this conceptually, but how do I pause? What does that look like? And what's a way to do that?
Yeah. Yesterday, I mean, I journaled, and it's something I've tried to do throughout her childhood and in general, but it's that pause to be like, this is what she did today, or she said this cute thing, and it's a pause, and it's an appreciation, and it's presence, and it's grief of like, and now that moment's gone, you know, and now I'm reflecting on it, and man, and it happened so fast. I mean, I think we were talking about just our perception of time and grieving, that's a huge denominator with grief is time, this element of time. It's finite, and acknowledging that and grieving, you know, and to me, that just puts me more into a mode of like, how do I be more present? How do I slow time down? There's psychological ways to do that, you know, and creating novelty and journaling and reflecting.
To your point, as deep as we can go in grief is as deep as we can go in gratitude. Like grief and gratitude are hand in hand, but it's often we want to be grateful, we don't want to be grieving. But if we can grieve, gratitude will occur. Because like you're saying, if I sit down and I journal, this thing is really hard, this thing that happened, I'm grieving, it brings you back here. And then you can match it with gratitude. That's a really beautiful practice, actually, is do a column of grief, a column of gratitude. I'm grieving this breakup, whatever it is, this growth of the person that is my child. Like I can just purely be in grief of it. Give so much space for all the grief, just grief. And then do a column of gratitude. And you realize how hand in hand grief and gratitude are. It's so cool, actually. It's really amazing that grief and gratitude, sorrows and joys, are these experiences that are connected. They're opposite sides of the spectrum, but they're they're interwoven in how we experience them because it is presence. It is, oh, I'm so sad about this thing that I lost or could have had. And then in that, it surfaces what is here, what I do have. So I think that can be a nice practice, is full grief, full gratitude, and see them weave. Yeah.
And the exact thing I thought of when you said that is Ho'oponopono,
Yeah.
which we recorded an episode on.
Oh yeah, it didn't
with
go out.
beautiful Noelani Love from Hawaii, but we had an audio issue.
So maybe we talk about Ho'oponopono.
Yeah, but that's kind of it's like the grief and gratitude within that prayer.
Yeah.
Help me out, because I always get the
Ho'oponopono is, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, I love you. And it's actually what I did on the uncoupling ceremony that I did with my ex-partner when we broke up. I did Ho'oponopono. It's a really beautiful practice. I'm glad you brought it up, actually, because it literally is go into the grief and then go into the gratitude.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, and you just talk about everything you're sorry for. Please forgive me, everything you want to be forgiven for, or just want to name. Thank you for blank blank, and I love you for blank blank blank. You could do it with somebody that passed, like when we did the ceremony, somebody that's passed away, or somebody that is currently in your life, or you're separated with, or even a friendship you currently have, and you're like, I just want to do Ho'oponopono. Or with yourself. Doing it with yourself is profound to navigate that. And we still have that tool from her. Maybe we'll actually share it after this episode, because it is very aligned with the practice of grieving.
It's it.
So that'll be available. We'll put that one out with this episode as a practice, because Noelani is impeccable with how she talks about and presents Ho'oponopono. And that is such a good way to start navigating grief and gratitude, and then not feel like you're going to get lost in the grief just going there, but bringing the worlds together.
Yeah, I did it with Noelani at the New Year's, basically, at this festival. And I'll say, like, I didn't go in, and again, this goes to the space, creating the space. And this is actually a great practice where you might feel like, I'm over that relationship, or I don't really feel I need to grieve anything, and that's okay. And then I went into this ceremony, and it can be done different ways. It's a prayer, and we sing it. And I've never felt like as transformed than after that, during and after that ceremony, of just so much lighter and grieving, like through the ceremony, and letting go of not even specific things that came up, but there were things there, like on a deeper level, that clearly just needed to be released. And the way she did it is, we say the prayer, as Ryan said, and then you go through like any past partners, brother, sister, father, mother, grandparents, friends, basically, right? Like all of our relations, and then ourself. And so powerful. And it's a great example that I experience of just creating the space, and that's half the battle. And then you go through this thing, and if nothing comes up, that's also okay, no judgment. But it was profound.
But most likely something will come up, right? That's if you actually give it space to be felt. The less you're in your head about it, of right, wrong, how this should be. Grief is often present, and grief can, Francis Weller talks about it, always be accessed. And to what you were saying before, these micro griefs, we don't usually give space for it, and we think it needs to take a large life event like a breakup or a death, which I'm glad we talked about, because these are really valuable things, and we navigate, and we need tools. We need to understand, how do I navigate all of this, and how do we not bypass it and suppress it, where it turns to illness and it turns to anger, it turns to other emotions that aren't grief, but it is grief. That's why many people, when they're in anger practices, at the end they'll cry, because the anger was a mask for the grief. But if we allow the grief, the anger doesn't occur in the same way. The anger can be a very helpful and healing process, but not when it's defensive and it's a false representation of the emotion. But it's present. Grief is there. Mm-hmm. Even just that beginning practice we did for a couple minutes of sounding and feeling, I could find it. I'm not grieving anything massive right now, but I can find it. Ho'oponopono, great example. I can find it when I do that. It's there if I let my body feel it. And the beautiful thing about that as well is you sing Ho'oponopono. And there's something about singing that gets you out of your head and just in our voice, in our activation. That's why I love somatic work so much. It gives permission to different parts. I'm not thinking it, I'm feeling it. And when I was singing, I would go between crying and laughing and I could think, and then oh wait, what am I doing? And then I come back and oh, I'm just feeling. Let it be felt. And that was one of the beautiful things about that as well. More permission to feel, more permission to feel grief, and gives more permission to feel love, to feel joy, to feel gratitude. It's hand in hand. Like more permission to be fully human, to be a whole human. That's what this whole podcast is about. And it's a great gateway. The grief gateway is an essential gateway to being whole. And I've missed that for so many years. I didn't think that was part of the game. I thought that was reserved for a massive life event. But it's there. Everybody in every moment can find a micro grief. There is something to be felt there. Just like you can find a micro joy in any moment. It's the same. It's essential to start creating little spaces for it. Start pausing for it. Pause and let these things be felt. Because it is such a superpower in the modern world to get out of the head, get into the body and into the feeling. Because not many people are doing that work.
Yeah. For me, another valuable insight or description of grief is that grief is just unexpressed love. You know, if you think about like, where have I not been able to express love, or where did I not feel love? Maybe you had a parent that was not present and maybe you felt angry about that, but actually you're grieving that you didn't have a father, you know, and then those are like the layers there.
Yeah. It's very true. And I only realized that when I was grieving in that time frame was as deep as my grief goes is as deep as my love knows. Like this poem it kept reciting in my head. And I realized, like, wow, I can feel this grief so deep because I love so deep. Mm-hmm. In this instance, it was this person. I was like, oh, I love her so much that I'm allowing this much grief. And then that alchemized it. I can feel this much grief because I know this much love. Mm-hmm. And the more I can go into the grief, the more I can go into love, the more I can strengthen my capacity to love. Mm-hmm. And now I feel like I have a bigger heart. There's more space because I've let it be felt. And doesn't mean I need to stay in love now. It means I get to feel grief more now and I get to feel love more now. They're hand in hand.
Yeah. Yeah, it's beautiful. And in those moments, I don't know for you, but it's like it hurts so bad. And like I can remember in moments of grief and then like kind of smiling and be like, wow, life is beautiful to be able to feel like this intensely.
Yeah.
And
that's the any feeling fully felt is bliss.
Yeah.
Like fully felt. One of the last things I want to talk about is communal grieving. Mm-hmm. And you were there for this ceremony. It was me and the partner I was with. She was navigating cancer for years. It was 3 years into her cancer journey. And we had this crew that meets every week for ecstatic dance. We've mentioned it many times. And it's between 50 to 100 people every week that come together. So we know each other well. But this dance in particular, I wanted to frame it for grieving. And I got this insight from this book, Ritual. Maldoma Some is a wizard when it comes to healing, community, and grief, because he comes from an African culture and a actual community that has space for these kind of ceremonies and that highlight grieving collectively and has frameworks for it. So if you want to know more frameworks, this book Ritual does it really well, like how to ritualize grief. And we did it at the ecstatic dance. I made an agreement with the DJ. I'm like, hey, we're going to play certain songs for the second half. It's going to be about Lauren's process. It's going to be about her grieving. There's a lot coming up. And so we had a framework that we used. But what organically unfolded when you just plant the seed of, we're going to be in grief, even though this is an ecstatic dance and it's celebration, yes, but it's for Lauren's cancer journey. And it was a donation-based thing to support her healing. So people were giving towards, contributing to her health. And what unfolded blew me away. When I just gave a bit of space, a bit of framework for grief, the way that it happened was I was holding Lauren, and then I called some of the women over to hold her behind her. Organically, some of the men came behind me to hold me. And so I was holding her, but I was being held, and Lauren was being held. So I didn't have to fully hold, but we were with each other. And she was bawling. I was bawling, and I look around and everyone's crying, and we're just all in grief. And nobody's like, oh no, we need to be in joy right now. It's like, just be in this emotion. There's no right or wrong. And one of the most profound things that just unfolded, we lifted her up, we rose her up, and maybe we can find this video to put into this as well, and held her, literally held her in her grief, but as a community. And the healing that happened in that moment, it was 50 friends and community holding her, and I've never heard her cry that hard. And she said, to date, I've never cried that hard. I've never allowed grief that much. But the collective permission that community gives you to grieve, that we're here, we're literally holding her up all together. You were there, you were part of that holding. What was expressed could not have been done alone. And this is to the quote of, healing doesn't happen in isolation, it happens in community. And on that day, I felt that more than ever. It's like, oh, that's what that quote means. I've heard it. But when we actually come together and can hold in whatever wants to arise, she could see that I am here, I am seen, I am a part of this community, not just when I'm well, not just when I'm serving, not just when I'm showing up strong, but when I'm grieving, I'm held and I'm loved. To be loved in your grief. It changed me. It changed my perspective of what community can be and what grief can look like and what a collective space can do for healing. And then we sat, we cried. I think we laughed after all together, and it just turned into kind of this sharing circle, kind of organically unfolding with a bit of structure. But on that day, it solidified for me what's possible in communal healing, that her and I were navigating grief for years, 3 years, but we couldn't go that deep, even just one-on-one. She sure as hell couldn't go that deep on herself, with herself. But in community, it occurred, and it allowed it to come through. So there's something so primitive about that, right? That's the village culture, not the heroic, like, I'm gonna heal, I got the answers, I'm gonna figure it out, I don't know. And to just be held in the I don't know, and I'm grieving. It was so potent. And maybe you could share your experience from the outsider's perspective of what that was like, because I was very much in it with her. I was also grieving my side of, I've been holding so much for years, and now I'm being held by my community as well. And now they're holding her. I don't have to be the only one holding her. I will hold her, and I will be held holding her. And something about that allowed the grief a whole other layer. Permission of, oh, this isn't mine to hold. This isn't even hers to hold. We can hold this together. And it's so much lighter when we do.
Yeah, it was beautiful. And obviously, I hadn't had the 3-year journey that you had. And I felt tears of, for me, it was almost joy to see the healing that you were experiencing. Because for me, it wasn't grief. Yeah. It was joy that you are both clearly feeling supported. And I think that's a huge part of whether it's in big community like that or with a friend like we talked about, but just allowing yourself to be held in the recognition that this is the human experience and this is what connects us, and sure, love connects us and grief does too. And I think the focus is more not even on connection. Unfortunately, a lot is just, we're in isolation in general. So we need to connect through love and through grief. And it was beautiful to witness.
Yeah. That was when I realized we can't love fully unless we grieve together. It really anchored it in for me that I didn't let myself be seen in that community, for instance, in tears, in sadness, in grief. But since that day, I've been able to love the people, and I've been so much more in love with those people, and they've loved me better. And since our day together, our connection is closer. But unless we let ourselves grieve and be messy and not know, and let ourselves be afraid of the unknown, of death, there's so much we're uncertain about. There's so much we don't know. There's so much I don't know. And to act like I always have it together, and then to try to love from that place, like, oh, I know what I'm doing, yeah, I love you, yeah. That's shallow love. That's not real love. That's not true love. But to grieve and to be messy and to just allow all the parts to be seen. Because like you said, when you saw me in that grief, you could see yourself, and we could drop into a new layer, and then we can love each other better. Oh, okay. Our friendship can deepen. But it's often we want to be perfect, and we want to be seen in a certain way. It's like, oh, that's how they're going to love me, because I know what I'm doing and I have it all together. It's like, no. Yeah, that's not true love. Like, true love is the messy. True love is the grief. True love is all of that space to be felt. And true love with myself is allowing myself to grieve, is giving myself the space, my heart the space to be tender, to not know, to be messy, especially as a man who often has his shit together and often leads people and does things around facilitation and holding. If I don't let myself go there, am I really a powerful facilitator? Am I really a whole space holder? Or am I just regurgitating information and trying to lead from an empty place? It's like, no, I want to go to the depths so I can hold people in the depths. I want to go there myself so I can hold you there when you're there. And I imagine you can trust me more to hold you there because you know I've been there. And I think that's what creates love and friendship. Love in relationship, love in community, is the ability to go to those places.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's vulnerable. I think that foundational thing is it feels vulnerable to expose ourselves that way. And that's how we build intimacy and trust and allow ourselves to be held. Now you trust me more, I'm going to trust you. And then it's just like this circle of depth that's created, rather than just like, hey, everything's good, we're happy, nothing to be sad about, or let's push that away. It's like, no, and let's enjoy this moment. We're going to die one day. That sucks. And it's beautiful. And you have loss, I have loss. And it just creates so much more depth and beauty.
To close this, I'm interested your thoughts on how people can start exploring this. Because we're, in a way, super lucky that like we can talk about these things. We can go into these spaces. I feel confident that I can ask you, hey, what are you grieving right now? Like yesterday, we were just talking about it, and you're like, oh, like Stella. And I'm like, oh, my dad. And we just have these conversations, and we've created community where this context can occur. But, I mean, it took intentional action. It wasn't just luck. And how do you feel like people can create spaces to start navigating grief with people? Because if you're watching this, you're probably interested in it and how to start exploring it. Obviously, there's the self practices, which we will give. Ho'oponopono will be there for you. Do that with a friend also. Explore it with people. Bring them into your thing. But maybe you have insight as well of how to explore this with family, with friends, with people you care about, to start cultivating the things we're talking about.
Well, I would say go to one of your closest confidants and friend and create the space to be like, to set up a framework. And maybe it's Ho'opono, but to say like, hey, what's on your heart? And instead of the surface conversations that we have, or like talking about the good things or complaining, it's like, what are you holding on to? Asking ourselves that, but doing it with someone that hopefully you can go to with that vulnerability. And then I think things will start to come up.
What I'll do is I'll write a couple out in the description that you can reference and come back to from this episode, like 5 to 10 prompts, because there's a game that we created called Curiosity and another game called the Permission Game. And in that, those games are made for deeper connection. And they're prompts within those card decks that, you could either go get those cards or just go to the description. We'll share like 5, 10 of our favorite ones, because what's on your heart is a beautiful one. What's something you're grieving right now, which could be hard for some people. One I really like is, what's one of the deepest sorrows you have experienced or are experiencing, and then what's one of the biggest joys that you've experienced or are experiencing. So the sorrows and joys conversation, because what that does is it gives space for both grief and gratitude. It's like, oh, okay, it's not just let's be sad together. It's okay, like let's talk about it all. Some of these things can feel hard probably with certain people, but find a person, explore this with. It's worth it. It's so worth it to go deeper, to not just be in those secondary satisfactions with people, not be in those shallow connections. Like, go deeper, and we'll give some prompts, some things you can try out, and like let us know how it goes, because this is a very important thing to explore, and it's worth it. It is worth it. Try the deathbed meditation as well. Easy practice. Meditate on your death. I say easy. Maybe hard to go to the place, but think about it. How does that feel? Ask your friend. What do you think about if you go to your death? Do you have regrets? Do you have something you're holding on to? Or if you didn't live it out, how would that feel? What potential that you haven't lived out yet would die with you? Or what song wouldn't have been sung if you didn't let your voice come through if you died tomorrow? Like, they're very important things to talk about and worthwhile to explore. So I'll condense it, and we'll come up with 5 to 10 different prompts. We want people to play with this and explore it. These episodes are explorations of these topics as we're exploring now. Yeah.
Beautiful. And yeah, put those in the description. Ho'oponopono, such a great
It'll be there.
place.
That's going to be the practice. That'll be a separate video that Noelani created, because the audio for that worked. The episode, unfortunately, we'll have to redo. But that'll be, I think it's a 10-minute guided practice. So find that now. If you made it this far in the episode, go find the Ho'opono, follow along with it, go into it, have a friend tag along, or try it out yourself. It's a great way to start.
Yeah. Thank you, Noelani, for that practice. Beautiful.
Amazing. Stay whole, everybody.